Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 24 Hours of PASS, our Growing Our Community. We're excited today to have join with us Amy Herold's session, Making the Leap from Developer to DBA. This 24 Hours of PASS event consists of 24 consecutive live presentations delivered by up-and-coming speakers and experts from the PASS community. All sessions will be available next week on 24 Hours of PASS. My name is Tom Norman, and I am the virtual chapter leader of virtualization for PASS. And as you know, there's many recordings, not only on 24 Hours of PASS, but all the virtual chapters that you can go to, as well as your local chapters and SQL Saturdays. And I have a quick few introductory slides before I hand the reins over to Amy. She will speak about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll move on to QA, where we'll ask questions you may have. If you have any issues, just type your questions into the question pane on the GoToWebinar control panel and someone will assist you. To maximize your screen, use the Zoom button on the top of the presentation window. Feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A field at any time. The question pane is located on the right side of your screen. Once we get to the Q&A portion of the session, I'll read off your questions to the speakers. Since all attendees are muted, you will need to submit your questions by typing in the Q&A field. Note, there will be a short evaluation at the end of your session. Your feedback is important to us, so please take a moment to complete it. It will show up on the screen. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Microsoft, Cisco, and Dell Software. In addition, I'd also like to thank our support sponsors for this event, SQL Century, HP, and SolarWinds. The staging of 24 Hours of PASS would not be possible without their support and dedication, and they are the reason that this event is free of charge. Next, I'd like to bring your attention to the upcoming PASS Summit. If you've never been to this summit, please come. It's a load of fun, as Amy and I can both attest to. It's going to be taking place this year in Seattle, Washington, between October 27th and 30th. PASS Summit 2015 will be featured over 200 sessions with world-class SQL Server experts. Planned and presented by the SQL Server community for the SQL Server community, PASS Summit is single-handedly the largest gathering of SQL Server and professional BI professionals. With over 5,000 attendees from all over the world, the PASS Summit is also a great place to network and to meet face-to-face with experts and peers and Microsoft MVPs. Most importantly, PASS Summit delivers on providing you with the answers for your SQL Server issues, along with knowledge, strategies, and skills you need to stay ahead of the curve. Contact your local chapter for a discount code to save $150 off. Optimize your savings by registering before the end of July 12th, as the price will go up at that time. To find out more about Summit, visit www.passsummit.com. And if you can't find your local chapter or virtual chapter, just contact me at armordba@gmail.com, and I can give you my virtualization chapter to save that $150. Next, I'd like to introduce Amy Herold. Amy and I are friends, and we met back in Oklahoma City almost a year ago when she was in one of my sessions. And it was very interesting because I was up there using my hands in different ways, and I do speak with my hands, and she loves to take photos and tweet them out. So Amy is a very good speaker. She has spoken at many SQL Saturdays, and I love to call her a friend and family of the SQL family. That is so much you'll see if you do come to the summit and get involved with the community. So at this time, we would like to actually turn it over to Amy, and thank you, Amy, for everything.
Oh, thanks, Tom. You're making me blush here. All right. So this is my session, Making the Leap from Developer to DBA. As Tom mentioned, my name is Amy Herold. I'm a Senior Database Administrator out of the Dallas, Texas area. I have my MCITB certifications for both SQL Server 2008 Database Administrator and Developer. On Twitter, I'm Texas Amy, and currently blogging at SQLkitten.com. For anyone interested, this posted note, there's a little story here behind this, and I normally tell this during this session. Basically, we have our SQL developer. One day he had, performance tuned a stored procedure and got it revised and down to, gosh, I think 30 seconds, and it's down. It was running in a number of minutes before that, and I said to him, can we make it better? And he wrote that and left it on my desk, and I kept it and took a picture of it. And later on, he came back and highlighted the word meanest after he forgot his password to our PDW appliance, and I reset it to don't forget your password, or a variation of don't forget your password. And I kind of rednecked it up a little bit, but don't forget your password. And he didn't find it as funny as I did, so but we laugh about it now, so it's all good. All right, so who this session is for? Primarily for developers. If you're a developer, you're looking to start in exploring the area of being a DBA, or also those people who are considered accidental DBAs, that you're the only person in your office who knows anything about SQL Server. And I have broken the session up into several different categories. First, I'll go over covering some typical developer duties. We'll cover these at a high level to establish a basis for comparison and demonstrate the differences between the two roles. And then we will move into DBA duties, and I have these broken up into 5 sections. Production DBA, the only constant is change in progress, DBA developer, writing and people skills. And then finally, some of my own personal thoughts and things on making the transition to a DBA. And for what it's worth, I started out as a C# and ASP.NET developer before deciding I wanted to pursue being a DBA full-time, and up until that point had not too much in the way of SQL work, and entered into a job where I had to literally dive in head first into doing both the development role and the DBA role. All right, developer duties. All right, so some of the duties of a developer are going to consist of, first off, they're going to translate requirements from the business into an application, coding both the UI and back-end behaviors and processes. They'll create database objects. They'll create the tables, the functions, views, triggers, anything necessary to make the application work, and also based on the requirements. They'll also work to maintain the referential integrity. So when creating the database objects, they'll come up with the primary key constraints, foreign keys, things of that nature to maintain the referential integrity of the data. Developers, for the most part, do strive for efficient coding. They'll always, in most cases, try and find ways to reuse their code, such as with stored procedures or functions. Find ways to encapsulate that and reuse that in different places. Be it in a single application, or call a single stored procedure from multiple places for multiple applications. Also, developers are concerned with code performance, and this goes for not only legacy code that's being modified, or it also goes for new deployments. So they're concerned with deploying new code to a production environment that that it performs well. In the environment where I currently am, our production data does not match in any way our pre-production data. So we do have numerous issues when it comes to performance of code when it finally goes to production. Developers are also concerned with avoiding blocking and deadlocking within their code, making sure there's no issues there, and because if they do have any blocking or deadlocking, things can possibly time out within the application, so they're concerned about that. Also, they're concerned about their code migrating to a newer version of SQL Server. They want to make sure their code is easily portable. Developers are also concerned with code security issues. SQL injection. They're concerned with writing their stored procedures and processes in a way that they can avoid, or at least attempt to avoid SQL injection attacks. PII, or personally identifiable information, such as social security numbers, addresses, things of that nature. Developers are concerned with protecting that data. We've had some issues. I work at a mortgage company, and we do have a lot of PII data within our system, and there are concerns about that, and coding around those issues, coding around that data, and making sure that we're doing what we need to do to protect that. Also developing SSRS pack reports and SSIS packages. Basically using the reports to deliver needed information to the business just based on requirements, and SSIS packages to create perform data extractions and transformations of data. All right, so what about a DBA? First off, DBA duties are going to be more broad. There's a lot of things that can go into a DBA role that are completely different from that of a developer. And also, that will also probably largely depend on the position that you're in, with the company that you're at the time. Like I said, it will differ from company to company. Maybe in some smaller companies, you might have the opportunity to work more closely with, users and things of that nature. Whereas at a bigger company, the DBA might be more, not necessarily isolated, but insulated in such a way that you're not necessarily interacting directly with users. You're interacting with the developers. You're interacting with other, people who are, writing code, things like that. Excuse me. Also, it's always good to be well-rounded as far as, keep yourself well-rounded as a DBA within SQL Server. I've done numerous things. These days I don't write a lot of SSIS packages. Recently I was tasked with writing some SSRS reports and, delivering those to certain people, but they were actually within our technology group. So, it's getting them the information. Sometimes it's getting them the information they need and not necessarily something that's going straight to the business. All right, so just to reiterate, the sections I have here are production DBA, the only constant is change in progress, DBA developer, writing and people skills. First off, data integrity. It's the #1 job of a DBA. As someone once told me, you are the keeper of the gold. Someone comes to you and asks to see the gold, your first answer is always no. They ask again, your second answer is always no. By the third time, they've usually said, well, okay, I need to see this piece of gold. I don't need to see all of it. I just need to see this small piece, and I need to look at it. I don't need to really modify it or do anything to it. Like, okay, you can see this piece of gold. And you restrict their access because, it's your job to guard the data. You don't want them taking off of the gold or doing something to harm the gold in any way. And so this also goes to backups and restores. Some people will say that you're only good as your last restore, and that is true in many cases. Also, security. Like I said, DBA controls who can access the data in your SQL Server. All right, production DBA. As I were talking about, backup recovery. Several aspects of this, data retention. The business is going to dictate, how long backups are to be kept. This might be, 2 weeks. It might be a month. This is going to also depend on what you have in the way of resources available, what you have in the way of space available. Most of us don't have space for nightly full backups. You might take a full backup once a week and then nightly differentials. We currently have some data retention issues where I am, so I have that on my list of things to work out. Recently I asked for a backup from February and I couldn't get it, and that was just back in May. So so I mean, there are issues out there, and we have to address those as they arise. Also, develop a recovery plan, and make sure that you have that tested and documented. So in the event you do need to restore a backup, you don't have to reinvent anything or do anything from scratch. It's already there for you. SQL Server database maintenance. This will include index fragmentation, doing nightly maintenance to rebuild or reorganize indexes and statistics. Also integrity checks, running DBCC check DB to check the logical and physical integrity of the objects in your database. Also SQL Server updates. Occasionally you'll need to update SQL Server itself with service packs, or say you can encounter an error and there's a known update for that error. Also, updates for SQL Server, it should be noted these should be thoroughly tested. Never apply even a SQL Server update to your production environment without applying it elsewhere first and validating and making sure that nothing else breaks. All right, service level agreements. These are basically an agreement between a customer and a service provider. In this case, the customer is the business and the DBA is a service provider. And this is basically, you're going to define, between you and the business, you will define what is acceptable service. So say you have an outage, be it a planned outage or an unplanned outage, you will define how long it is acceptable for your database to be down. Recently we did our own DR testing, failed over to our Houston disaster recovery site. Everything was going well up until we failed back over to our Louisville site, and we had an issue with one of our main production databases. It took 19 hours to synchronize. And so this, it was an issue. I actually reached out on Twitter and asked questions, and yeah, I was having trouble trying to find metrics to show that it was synchronizing and show that there wasn't an issue. And heard back from someone, and they gave me some good information, and I was able to demonstrate those metrics to my boss. And while it took 19 hours to synchronize, that information helped move us forward, and and just into just a holding pattern to let that happen naturally, and know that yes, there was light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, it would finish, but we also knew that there was an issue that we would need to go back and address afterwards and find out exactly why that happened. Performance tuning. Indexes. Do you have too many indexes or too few indexes? There's some good queries out there, especially some from Kimberly Tripp that she's put together to identify extra indexes or indexes or duplicate indexes. Those are something to be looked at. Having too many indexes, you're going to increase the amount of time that your nightly maintenance will take, and that's not a good thing. You don't want to be overly indexed. Index maintenance, rebuild versus reorganize. This will depend on a little fragmentation, and also in some cases it will depend on the version of SQL Server you're on. Currently our main production servers are on 2008 R2 Standard Edition, so we can't do online rebuilds. So we are doing strictly reorgs every night, or on our schedule. So that's a limitation that we have, that we're talking about moving to 2014 Enterprise Edition. So that's one of the things that we won't have going forward, hopefully. But it's it really depends on the environment you're in the version of SQL Server you're on. Also, identifying poor performing T-SQL. Get a query together. Look for long running procedures. Is there a high number? Do you have a procedure that has a high number of index scans versus seeks? Look at your execution plan. See where things can be improved in those long running procedures. I don't think there's probably a company out there that doesn't have some room for improvement in their T-SQL and their store procedure code, because there's so many different aspects that you can dive into and address. Whether it's you're making a lot of subquery calls, you have user-defined function calls. Those can be problematic with performance. There's any number of things that can be looked at. Monitoring. It's always good to do monitoring. And monitoring does cover a wide range of tasks. You have performance, you have I/O, reads and writes. You want to monitor disk space. It's always good to know, you're running out of disk space before you run out of disk space. You don't want to run out of disk space, in the middle of the day. Also, monitoring logs, checking for errors, finding out if there's anything that needs to be addressed on your server. Also checking to see if maybe any jobs are failing. Also, it's good to get a baseline. Information gather, when you're not having any issues, and see what things are running, running like then, and then you can use that as a basis for comparison when you are having issues. Load balancing. As with anything, things change over time. So, as a business grows, load on the server will likely grow too. Maybe you're going to, change things. You're adding new databases, new applications. It's always good to monitor workloads on a server and, look for, changes, increases. Some things will increase at a faster rate. Others will increase at a slower rate. And make the necessary changes, to improve performance, whether it be, move off some databases to a different server. You might have one database that's taking up all your resources, and it is really better off on its very own server all by itself. We actually have a case like that right now. We have a database that we're talking about at some point getting moved off. We had some issues recently, and that was the recommendation from the vendor. So, security. Like I mentioned before, security is who can access the data. Not only who can access it, but what they can do with it. You also, with security, you have you can do data encryption. This can either be accomplished through TDE or transparent data encryption, or there are a number of third-party tools out there that you can utilize for encryption. We're currently utilizing one of those tools on a number of our SQL servers where I currently am, and we've run into some issues with that. Things weren't configured correctly when the tool was installed, and actually one day we were trying to troubleshoot an issue, and I couldn't get to the directories where my database files were. I'm an admin on the server, and I was getting access denied. So I thought that was rather strange, and come to find out it had to do with the encryption tool that we were using. So while they're good, and some of the third-party tools may be rather efficient, there are always there is always the possibility that you could run into some snags like that. Auditing. Auditing users and the access they have. You should always try and proactively audit the permissions on your SQL Server instances. If multiple people have access to make security changes, you never know what you might run into or what you might find. This not only goes for SQL Server instances, but also AD. At one point, I found a developer in our SQL Server admins group and there was no reason for him to be there. Had to get him removed. Currently, I'm working on setting up triggers on our servers to monitor our security changes and to try and tighten things a little bit in that area. Let's see. Also, this goes to working with auditors. Many times as a DBA, you'll be tasked with working with auditors and gathering information for them. And this is something that I've been doing a lot of recently. Is actually working with two of our security folks yesterday to get the information for the auditors, and it was kind of interesting. That they were there sitting with me, and then a developer came over. So these two things, user access, kind of tied into working with auditors in such a way. I'll explain. We had a developer come over and ask for temporary, or he said temporary, write access on one of our QA environments. I said to him, like, you're asking for that while people from security are sitting right here? And he quickly changed his tune and said, no, never mind, carry on, and walked away. So that's just a little funny tidbit there, but yeah, developers will try and ask for things or try and get security permission changes, and it's up to the DBA to determine whether or not those are valid or even necessary. Scripting. You'll do a lot of scripting as a DBA. You'll create a script to perform a specific task. This could be for monitoring, database maintenance, or anything of the like. This will largely be T-SQL. Querying dynamic management views and system tables to pull back information related to a particular issue, or pull back real-time information on what's going on in your server. Also, you might, as a DBA, do a lot of PowerShell. I've become a huge proponent of PowerShell. I have done a lot of work with this. I have automated our deployment process using PowerShell. I'm always looking for other ways to automate processes with PowerShell, and therefore also make my life easier. Replicating data. Basically, replicating data, you're moving data from one server to another. You might do this for reporting or other needs. You can replicate just a subset of tables. You don't need to replicate an entire database. It just depends on the needs of what the project is, and where the data is being replicated to, and what's needed there. Transactional merge or snapshot replication. That just depends. That's your choice, is to basically determined by the business needs. Currently, I've only had experience with doing transactional replication, and we're currently doing a lot of that where I am right now. There's also different methods for setting up replication. A lot of times setting up replication through the UI can be long and drawn out and painful from a standpoint of generating the snapshot and also initializing your subscriber. There's a method of doing a backup and backup of the database and copying that over to a server and restoring it, and initializing through a backup and restore. I've done that before, and that worked beautifully. We have some instances where we have multiple database for efficiency reasons, and so I haven't done it yet with the multiple publications, but I have done it for single publications, and that works really well. Okay. High availability. At some point as a DBA, you may be asked to set up some type of high availability, whether it be log shipping. Basically, it's what it says, shipping transaction log backup files from one server to another and restoring them on another copy of the database that's in recovery. You might have the opportunity to do some mirroring. We've done quite a bit of mirroring for disaster recovery purposes. Also, with the newer version of SQL Server, you have the option of having availability groups. This this will be replacing mirroring at some point in the future, and it's something that we're probably going to look at doing at the company where I'm at right now, but within the year probably for our production servers. All right, the only constant is change in progress. All right, capacity planning. Innovation equals new databases. Increasing the number of databases may cause space issues on your server. It's always good to monitor your data growth when it comes to your databases. So that, you know, at the end, say you've monitored your growth for 6 months or a year, you can at that end, you know, say at the end of the year you're being asked to say, you know, how much space you're going to need for the next year. Well, if you've monitored your growth and you have those numbers, you can estimate, give a reasonable estimate of how much space, you know, or growth you're going to have over the next year, and put in the request for that space. All right, needs requirements analysis. Excuse me. Basically, this could be for third-party applications or custom development. You know, depends on whether you're working with the vendor or with your own developers. This will, at the very least, encompass server and space requirements. So also some vendor applications might have security requirements that, depending on the security policies where you're at, this might dictate that they have to be on their own SQL Server instance. Like if users need elevated access to the databases for the application or on the server itself. Some applications, there are some applications out there, they might set up SQL accounts on their own. We actually have an application on a server that's like that. And so it's constantly, when they add a new user, it's creating a new SQL login on the server and adding that user account tied to the login to the database. But working with vendors, it's always good to get all the documentation or requirements. A lot of times your vendor documentation, from a SQL Server standpoint, may not necessarily be complete. You may have to reach out to them to get more information and requirements, just based on certain information. You may be the server requirements. It may be you need to ask questions about whether or not how much data growth is anticipated, or how much they would anticipate versus how much your company may possibly generate in the way of data. Testing. You'll test all kinds of things in the DBA. One thing you'll test is your backups, making sure you can restore backups from any point in time, making sure there's no, you don't have any restore failures. So in the event of a disaster, you can successfully restore your backups. Testing third-party tools. You may be able to get, a temporary license from a vendor to install a product to test. Vendors will typically bend over backwards to give you as much time as you need to test their product because they want you to buy their tool. And if you put it the right way, you may be able to get some substantial discounts from those vendors. Also, testing things that are new to you. There are so many different technologies coming out with SQL Server. It's always good to try and take the opportunity to test out some things. I was able to at one point to get some test servers and test out doing availability groups, so that when we do have when we do move forward with that in the future, I do have some experience with it. Troubleshooting. Troubleshooting as a DBA will take on many different things. A lot of times you'll be troubleshooting, you'll have to drop what you're doing troubleshooting. It might be, something's timing out on the website, a procedure's running long, and the application's not able to handle that length of time it's timing out, some type of issue like that. Debugging. You might have code that you're working on that you have to debug and find a resolution for, or trying to improve on something that's already working. Also, whatever you're doing with troubleshooting, make sure and document the resolution. it's you don't want to have to come back and do the troubleshooting all over again, reinvent the wheel. Always document. Excuse me. Managing test environments. So if you're a larger company, like you likely have a full pre-production environment like we do where I am, Dev, QA, and UAT. You want to test application updates. This can not only include application code, but also T-SQL code. Let's see, also testing SQL Server updates. Always want to test these. I can't stress this enough. You don't want to apply a SQL Server update to your production server and then subsequently take the server down because there was an issue that you hadn't found because you hadn't tested for it. Also testing third-party applications. You want to always test your third-party application updates prior to those going to production because you never know what you might run into. I was working with someone last night. We had a production update for a third-party app, and we had to roll back. Things did not come up clean. Things were not working on his end, and I was seeing failed logins in our SQL Server log. So something was going on, and there was obviously there's no documentation on the vendor site. He looked there, couldn't find any, so we had to roll back. These things happen, but you plan for it, and he restored the server from a snapshot, and we were good to go. All right, DBA developer. As a DBA developer, you may do a lot of database application development. This will be a lot of coding access to SQL Server. You'll probably likely do most of this, and this would be likely done through T-SQL and stored procedures. Also, application development as a DBA, you may have the opportunity to do some work with PowerShell. Once again, can't stress it enough, PowerShell is a really great tool for DBAs to just really overall make your life easier. Application integration. Let's see here. Making different applications basically talk to one another. You might have one database that is the source for multiple applications. You might be calling multiple scripts from that database across different applications. This would involve, obviously custom applications and T-SQL scripts, SSIS, things like that. ETL processes: export, transform, and load. Let's see. This is mainly going to be for BI applications. BI applications, also maybe some data warehousing applications. SSIS is typically the tool that's used for this, just depending on the data and the needs. You may be able to do something with another tool like PowerShell, maybe not. You can also create your SSIS using BIML. I've seen some sessions on BIML. Dave Stein presented our local user group here in Dallas on BIML, and I was amazed. I think everybody should start using BIML. I went back to work the next day, and I went and talked to one of our data warehouse developers and said, you need to look into this. I don't think they have yet, but they really should. BI and data warehousing. This is going to encompass a number of things. A lot of the BI and data warehousing is going to do for data mining and cleansing. For a data warehouse, you're going to be merging sets of data from different sources and bringing those together and cleansing that data to return basically reporting data and information to the business. Cleansing that data could involve address validation, deduping data, things of that nature. Let's see, reporting. Most users will not understand what a data warehouse is. We had that happen where I am. They might refer to the data warehouse as an application. And, we all know that's not the case. But the data warehouse will be used to generate reports for the business, to return bigger sets of data. Writing. Documentation. Knowledge transfer. It's always good to do knowledge transfer. I mean, if you want to take a day off, or or what if you get hit by a bus? It's always good to do knowledge transfer. Also, rules enforcement. Documentation is really great for rules enforcement. If it's documented, if you have some rules that you have documented and the business signs off on those, then you have something to push back with when something's not right. Also, documenting for disaster recovery. Having a document ready, so in the event you have to rebuild your current infrastructure, should major problems arise, you already have that there in front of you. All you have to do is follow your document. Like I mentioned before, we recently tested we did some of our disaster recovery testing, and that went fairly well, with the exception of when we failed back over. But we had that process documented, and so in the event that an actual disaster happens, we are ready to respond. Developing standards and best practices. Coding standards, formatting your code, rules for things like, not joining tables you don't need, things like that. Handling of data. Not having a long list of things in a stored procedure, like in an in statement. Put that stuff in a table. How many joins do you have? Naming conventions. Naming conventions of both tables and procedures, everything can be important. Also, documenting enables enforcement. So once again, if the business signs off, if you have this documented and the business signs off, then you could push back when a developer gives you something that's not right. As far as coding standards go, formatting of code, we did have an issue. So if anyone is using, say, SQL compare, and you do a compare on developer's code, well, if they reformatted the whole thing, the whole thing looks different. We've had some developers do that, so I've had to push back on them and let them know, hey, don't go reformat the code. Just make your change, so all I have to go find is your change. Because if they reformat it, all they do is just upset me. Report writing. SSRS, T-SQL, stored procedures, it could be done any number of ways. You may report on, backup statuses or index fragmentation, any number of administrative processes, that are within the database. Reporting on job failures, things of that nature. Formatting. It may be that the report you're putting together, you have to be concerned about the appearance of the report. It could be that it's something that's going to managers or people outside technology. And in that case, a lot of people, want to see something pretty. They want HTML. They want something nice and pleasant to look at. So that can be a concern for when you're doing reports. People skills. So as a DBA, you may possibly be tasked with working, training other DBAs. Knowledge transfer benefits everyone. Not only it benefits everyone, but it benefits the business. And it lets you go on vacation. And before, going to one of my SQL Saturday events, I had to do a brain dump to the other DBA at the time and let him know everything I had on my plate. So, if somebody came to him, there weren't any surprises. It's not always possible to remember everything you're working on, but, as much as you can, knowledge transfer is always a good thing. Very recently, I made sure our group of email was accessible from the outside, and I've been telling everyone, send things to the group email. Don't send them to one of us. Send it to the group. So, while one of us might be working the issue, it's going to all of us. We're all aware of it. We all know what's going on. You may be tasked with training developers. Lots of times, developers won't have any concept of certain things within SQL Server and how they affect the database. So it's up to the DBA to try and educate them. And you're educating them so they're getting a benefit, but it also benefits you. If you give them information that helps them do their job better, they're going to write better code. They're going to make less work for you. You also may be tasked with, training users. At one point in my career, I was working directly with users on certain issues and situations. It was in the beginning when I was still doing development work. I had worked on and developed an application for the call center folks to use where I was, and occasionally they would uncover problems with that application. I tested it as much as I possibly could, or as much as I thought was necessary, and I covered just about everything. But sometimes they would do something, it would produce an error. So when that happened, I would go, talk to that person, go downstairs and visit them, and have them show me what they did. And from there, I was able to, take that information back to my desk, reproduce the error, and make the necessary changes within the application to get things working and working properly. Vendor relations. This is the amount of times you have to talk to a vendor is largely going to depend on the application. Some vendors you'll rarely talk to. Others you'll talk to on a regular basis. You might know the names of their children, depending on your contact there. This might be for performing updates of the application. It also might be for doing troubleshooting. A lot of times there are some vendors that you'll have issues with, and I think we had one instance of a vendor, and I won't say who it is. They're a very large company. You've all heard of them. We had an issue running an update, and actually our infrastructure person did not include the DBA in the update. And oh, excuse me, here my battery's running low, and I didn't plug in my power cord, which I know I have. Give me 1 second. Can't believe I didn't do that. My apologies. There we go. All right. Anyway, vendor relations. We had a update with a vendor, and it didn't go well. It failed. It was failing mid-update, and I get called in the middle of the night and told this is failing. And once I got past the part where they should have included a DBA in this, I started looking at it, and we weren't able to recover from it right then. They had to back out, and then we worked with the vendor later on. The resolution to this was actually going in and modifying the SQL code that was being called as part of the update, which is crazy. You shouldn't be having to do this. The vendor should have accounted for this within their update. It was dropping and adding some indexes back. The adding of the indexes was the part where the whole update was timing out. They obviously did not account for a business such as ours having as much data as we have, and having indexes take longer than a minute to apply. So things can kind of get a little hairy, a little interesting sometimes with vendors. Working with teammates. Basically, this could include other DBAs. Also, it could include other people, in IT and as well as outside of IT. Basically playing well with others. It's always, good to, try and get along with everyone. A lot of times they don't always like the answers you have to give them, but you're doing your job. You're giving them answers you're giving them for a reason. So, say you're not letting your developers access certain environments because, they've proven to you they shouldn't have the access, so you've taken it away. You're doing what you're doing for a reason. It's for the benefit of the business. You might have to work with people outside of IT for the purposes of, say, DR testing. With our DR testing, we had numerous meetings, and with people from all aspects of the business. So that is a possibility as a DBA. Managing a team. As a senior DBA, you might be tasked with managing other DBAs. You know, their experience level will vary. It will be up to you to, you know, delegate certain tasks and determine, you know, who gets what. So say, you know, you have an issue with a long-running store procedure, and you have a mid-level DBA that is quite adept at performance tuning stored procedure code, but you have a junior DBA who's not as experienced at it. Do you give it to your mid-level and let them do it, or do you give it to the junior to help build their experience and let them know, hey, you know, ask questions of, you know, so-and-so over here, ask questions of myself, you know, let them gain the experience that's going to help them further their career. Also being a team lead or a manager over DBAs could possibly be very well less technical. I'm kind of moving into this role right now, but I find it hard to pull myself away from the technical side. I like being technical. So that's going to have to be something I have to figure out for myself and where I want to go with that. Management relations. It's always good to have good relationships with managers because, you know, while, you know, you might need things, you know, some of the times, they're going to need things other times. So, you know, it goes both ways. Also, relationships outside your department matter. There may be times when you need something, and to avoid a lot of red tape, you know, that good relationship will benefit you. And, you know, like I said, you're eventually going to need something. You know, be it, you know, drive space, you may need to put in the request for a new third-party software package, you know, that costs thousands of dollars. I mean, who knows? You're going to need something. And making the transition. So there is a learning curve to being a DBA. I wouldn't call it a steep learning curve. It's just it's experience. It's getting in there. It's digging in. It's you know, learning, you know, from experience. Being a DBA is not something they teach you in school. We have an intern right now, and I was talking to her the other day and trying to gauge where she's at and, you know, what she feels like she's wanting to do for, you know, her career, and you know, she's young and she obviously doesn't really know just yet, and that's okay. But it, you know, like I said, it's not something they normally teach. Oh yeah, she said she was going to take a database class. I told her if they're using Access, maybe she should run away. But yeah, it's definitely something that you have to learn, and, you know, and also changing jobs. I found that, I mean, someone told me that you'll learn more in a shorter period of time by taking on, you know, more, you know, positions. So like if you take a bunch of 3-month contracts, you're going to get different experiences in each of those contracts. Find a mentor. There's, you know, lots of great people out there in the SQL community that can act as mentors. After thinking about this, I never really saw it this way until now, but, you know, I've worked with some great people that I still stay in touch with and that really acted as mentors to me, and really smart people. You know, I reach out to them periodically, you know, on issues and you know, bounce things off them, and, you know, vice versa. Also, having a passion for doing DBA work. I cannot stress this enough. I feel like I'm a very passionate person for this, maybe a little too passionate sometimes. And but that's you know, part of it's who I am, and it's not something I feel like I, you know, can be faulted for. In fact, I was talking to my manager of development last week, and, you know, he was commenting, you know, like, you're very passionate. Like, yes, I know. But it's something that, you know, if you have a passion for it, you're going to do, well at it. You're going to excel. You're going to want to dig in and learn new things. We recently found a new hire that we're hoping to get here soon. He's very curious. It seems like he has that drive and determination to learn new things, and he's not going to tell us he doesn't know he knows something when he doesn't. So that's, we found those two really good positive character traits, in someone that, we want to make part of our team. What draws me in? There's challenges to being a DBA. It's challenging, very challenging. There's no shortage of finding new ways to, automate things, write new code, be it PowerShell or something else. There's challenges in educating other people and communicating with others. It's always a learning experience. There's no shortage of, growth in being a DBA and working within SQL Server. I've worked with some people before that, I worked with one guy for, who I think he had half the year's experience I had at the time, but was calling himself a senior DBA. At that point, like I said, I had twice the year's experience he had. I was not comfortable calling myself a senior DBA yet. And, I wouldn't do that if I didn't feel that I was up to the task. Now I feel like I am. There's still things I don't know, and that's okay, but I'm always, trying to improve on myself and learn more and do whatever I can to, do that. Also, being a DBA, on some level, you can't make these things up. There's crazy things that happen all the time, and I just have an example of one of those. Where'd it go? There we go. Okay. Yeah, you can't make these things up. Let's see if this is on 2 slides or 1. Okay, so we had a little animation here. I didn't see that. I got this email right after I got to the location of a SQL Saturday event, and I was just kind of unnerved by it. Basically, we had a vendor, and their SQL Server expert or database specialist was going to turn off the SQL Server agent and see if it resolved the problems. But I, immediately responded back, let our people know SQL Server agent has nothing to do with what's going on. But you can see here they just wanted to give me a heads up. So yeah, it's always an interesting job being a DBA. All right, so Tom, are there any questions? Tom?
Yeah, we got one left while we got a minute to get it.
Okay.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Amy?
Yes.
We got one question. We got 1 minute here. Is
Okay.
there any way to find out if columns within a non-clustered index is being used or not?
Okay, so whether or not columns are being used in a non-clustered index.
I was looking around and Googling, and I didn't see anything right off the hand.
I would initially go to information or scripts from Kimberly Tripp with SQL Skills. She's done a lot of things regarding indexing, and she has some stored procedures out there that you can apply to your environment and run that will return all the index information, both of, just really detailed index information that might be what they're looking for.
All right, well, that's going to be the end of our session. We want to thank you for attending today. We want to thank you, Amy, for your expertise, and thank our sponsors, Microsoft, Dell, Cisco, Dell, and our other supporting vendors, SQL Server, and HP and SolarWinds. Stay tuned for our next session here. Our next session is going to be protecting your data with encryption from Ed Litton Dick. Thank you, and have a great day.